Hey, I'm here at Freddy's in Las Vegas, Nevada to give it a try. Okay, so I wanted to put on a nicer shirt to make this announcement because it's very serious. That may very well be the best fast food hamburger in America. It is better than Shake Shack. It is better than Five Guys. And as odd as this sounds to say, it may be as good or better than In-N-Out. We will all have to do more research.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Today's guest is writer for The Simpsons, executive producer and showrunner of season 7 and 8, along with Josh Weinstein, co-creator of Mission Hill, and most recently, executive producer on Disenchantment and Instagram Thought. Folks, it's Bill Oakley. Hey, Bill.
Hello. Nice to talk to you guys.
Great to have you on. And we are all very excited about your latest star turn online to talk to a fellow creative.
Fellow influencer.
That's terrific. I'm delighted. I can't possibly tell you how thrilling it is to be recognized as an online force and maybe get invited to the next Fire Festival or something like that. I can only hope.
You in a car eating one of those cheese sandwiches that they were serving to everyone.
Oh yeah, man, I would have had a blistering review, but maybe I wouldn't. On the other hand, maybe I wouldn't get invited if I was too critical. So I got to be careful with that kind of stuff, I guess.
We're the same way. We eat disgusting political opinions.
It's true. Oh my God, it's true.
So why, you had been an multiple Emmy Award winner with a prosperous career in Hollywood. Why did you make the turn to being an influencer?
Okay, well, first of all, let me say this isn't really a career turn. It doesn't pay anything. I have not received any money for it. It's really more my hobby, whereas other guys my age would probably be out playing golf or doing something like that. This is my hobby, and it's previously I just kind of posted my opinions on Twitter, and then about a year ago I decided, hey, the tweets are getting too long and complicated. Why don't I just film myself with my phone and put it on Instagram? And I started doing that, and it kind of took off from there. It's really just kind of like, as I said, my hobby, because I am very opinionated about fast food and convenience food and condiments and all that stuff. And my family was getting sick of hearing me talk about that stuff, so I decided to direct it towards the general public, and they're eating it up.
That's exactly how I got into
like
podcasting.
Us.
My
Right.
wife said, for the love of God, shut the fuck up about politics.
We alienated those around us and found ourselves unable to function in the modern world, so we had to find an outlet for our opinions.
And a community of the likewise socially maladroit and alienated.
So so Bill, you're kind of like us in that if the cameras weren't rolling, you would still be doing this.
Absolutely. I was doing it for years before the cameras started rolling, and I'm still doing it. I mean, I only put about half the stuff that I discover online just for fear of like overwhelming the system,
How did the fast food? You say you're passionate about fast and convenience food. How did the hobby in your role as sort of a food critic of mass consumptibles? How did that begin?
I think that just to psychoanalyze it a bit, I barely got any fast food when I was a kid. This is the thing. I'm overcompensating for the lack of fast food in video games. Like when I was a little kid, like they'd only just kind of invented Atari and stuff like that and arcade games, but we didn't have any anywhere within like 50 miles of us, and I never got one. And the same with fast food restaurants. Like back, because we lived out in the country, like really up near like the rural Maryland, Pennsylvania border. And like, so I never got to go, like for my birthday, the biggest treat in the world would be to drive 50 miles to Baltimore or DC and go to McDonald's. So I never had that, and I never had video games, and now I'm overcompensating for both, I think is the psycho history of this project.
So you're like an Amish kid on Rumspringa who goes nuts.
Yeah. But it's been like 30 straight years of Rumspringa now. So
hell yeah.
It's interesting because it's always interesting when I meet someone from a different socioeconomic background who says, "Yeah, growing up, I've never ate fast food," and that is completely alien to my experience in this country.
Yeah, my most vivid fast food memories are stealing change from my dad's dresser to drive my bike to Taco Bell, where you get a beef soft taco for 39 cents.
Preposterous.
And that is every food group. That is a full meal in a little pocket. It's amazing.
I'm going to show my age here, but I think my clearest fast food childhood memory was there was a Burger King on 82nd and Broadway where I grew up. And when I would go there as a kid, there used to be a smoking section in the Burger King. And they would have like molded plastic ashtrays built into the table.
I remember those too.
So nothing like, I would love to go to the BK with my mom or dad.
Flame broiled Whopper,
and they would just always be like, don't look at the smoking section. Don't look at those people. Just keep walking. Don't make eye contact with them.
What I noticed about your reviews, Bill, is that even if you're kind of down on this dish, you're still very sunny and pleasant about it.
Oh, yeah.
You're kind of like the anti-John Podhoretz in this way.
Yeah, a lot of delightful encounters with food. It's like, hey, even if I didn't love it, I'm out of my house and it tastes decent.
I'm glad to hear you guys say that. I've gotten so many people. I think people like my general demeanor. Like, I've gotten so many. The most common communication I get is like, this really cheered me up when I was depressed. Or like, if you're depressed, you've got to watch 50 Bill Oakley reviews in a row. And like, I really like that. I'm pleased. And also a lot of people call me dad too, which is a little weird.
Oh, like Bill Oakley is daddy, folks.
Think of me as, in fact, one guy said that the genre of my videos was extreme dadcore. And like, I didn't, I'll take it. I'll accept it.
That's another thing we have in common. A lot of people call me dad on Instagram too.
I was wondering, Bill, speaking about disposition and style, do you have any inspirations among your fellow car food reviewers? I'm thinking specifically of someone like, I don't know, Joey's World Tour. Have you ever watched his videos?
I have. I've watched all those other guys' videos. And
the Weekend Review kid in the suit.
Yeah, I love the kid in the suit.
Who do you think is the best one other than you, of course?
You know, I don't want to say, and I don't watch them. I never watch them all the way through because I don't want to unconsciously crib stuff from them. First of all, I got to say those guys are titans. Like, those guys have literally have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of subscribers on YouTube, and I only have 13,000 on Instagram. So like, I guess I'm kind of a rarefied thing, and those guys they connected to.
You're
a
the
giant
Velvet
audience.
Underground.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not trying to copy them in any way, and in fact, my inspiration is usually more like Food Network style stuff, where I'm like, the corniness of the way that Food Network shows are edited and scored is a lot of what I try to do. Is like, it's more like Guy Fieri. I think that
you're like a normcore Guy Fieri.
Well, thank you. That's what I wanted to hear.
Bill, you mentioned that people find your reviews very uplifting and positive, and it's sort of like just slipping into like a nice warm blanket, getting like all snuggled up. But usually the format of, shall we say, sort of dad-aged white guy sitting alone in a car addressing a camera on his phone those are usually marked by rage. And
I know.
Father's rights.
I was just going to say that. I think that people draw some. This was not the intention of my reviews. People draw some comfort from seeing a 50-year-old white guy who is not furious.
Yeah,
and like,
absolutely.
I think that, like, I'm a 50-year-old white guy, 53-year-old white guy who appears to be having a good time and is friendly and outgoing and introducing you to these new dishes, as opposed to almost every other guy my age who is furious about something and just won't shut up about it. I think you know who we're talking about.
Oh yeah, I hope that there never comes the day where I check in on a Bill Oakley review and you have shaved your head and have a beard.
Yeah, if the Democratic Party really does want to try to claw back these Trump voters or appeal to a tiny sliver of the aggrieved white electorate, I think they need Bill's style.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're so mad? There are abundance of treats just out by the interstate. A miracle mile of delights and treats for the senses.
I think that you guys are onto something.
Why don't we get into the specifics of some of America's
let's get down to the
national
real shit
and regional fast food chains.
The stuff our fans love to hear about.
Yeah.
Wait, do your fans love to hear about it, or do they? Are you?
No, they're gonna love hearing about it from you. They hate it when we talk about it. So we're getting you in here to be sort of the voice of God to cut through the muddle.
Okay.
Bill, what in your opinion is the best national fast food chain, and what is the best sort of regional gem? And then what's the hot newcomer?
Yeah.
This is really difficult, guys, because there's so many different things that constitute region and national. Like, White Castle is really more regional.
Yeah.
And like Carl's Jr. / Hardee's are both two regional things, but they combine into one thing. So I'm going to have to tell you that I think the only one that covers the whole country that I would say is the absolute best at the moment is Wendy's.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
Wow, that spicy chicken sandwich is one of the best fast food items ever created.
I always get the spicy chicken sandwich when I go to Wendy's.
People say the burgers are good, but I always feel like if I order the burger, I'm going to hit myself afterward and say I should have got the chicken.
I'd say don't sleep on the burger.
Maybe I'll get one of those tiny burgers to go with the chicken.
But let me say that McDonald's has done an incredible job of improving their offerings over the past 2 years, and I think they could overtake Wendy's with a few more novelty items,
They have, but they've had a lot of misfires, like that weird large Big Mac.
Oh, the Big King, or no, the Grand Mac Grande or something. Yeah, I tried that. It was just way too much.
This was the weird thing about McDonald's. And
it was like eating a fucking Frisbee covered in mayonnaise.
Wait a second, I must have missed this. McDonald's they've rolled out
a three-tiered system. There was a mini Mac that was just one patty on a bun. Then there was the classic Mac, and then there was the Grande Mac.
And I got the Grande Mac once.
Me too.
And it was one of the worst decisions of my life, and I felt so sick
It's
afterwards.
just way too big. The problem is that the regular Big Mac, they do recognize that that's a little too small, but they went too big. They didn't find the right point.
Okay, so what about like a sort of a gem, a fast food franchise that maybe not everyone is lucky enough to live near or know about?
Yeah,
this is a no-brainer for me. Now the thing is, there's dozens of ones that people love that I have never been to. Like for instance, Whataburger,
Culver's is so good.
I would love to try them, but I can't speak to them for this particular thing. What I would say is it is a tie between In-N-Out Burger and Freddy's steak burgers.
See, after your review of Freddy's, I was like, damn, I have to find one of those places.
I'd never heard of Freddy's.
Yeah, I've never even heard of Freddy's.
I've seen it on the highway, but I'd never been to one.
And
They're all over the place in the Midwest and stuff. And like the one I went to was Las Vegas, but it was so memorable that like I still consider it one of the highlights of my year.
All right, when we take the West Coast swing, we're going.
Besides Culver's, what do you look for the most? What do you crave the most that you haven't had access to?
Besides Culver's, Brahms. Have you guys ever heard of Brahms?
No.
Whataburger, Zaxby's, Raising Cane's.
Oh yeah, I want to try Zaxby's. I've had Raising Cane's.
How was it?
It's pretty good. The star is the sauce. The tenders are nice. They're pretty they are tender, but they're kind of standard issue. But the sauce is what makes it.
Okay. And also, like, you know what? I would like to be able to go to Chick-fil-A, but I'm sick of this crap with them. And like just this morning, another thing came out with another expose on all their donations to these anti-LGBTQ causes. And I'm like, God damn it. I really do. A couple times I've been there, I really like the food, but I'm sick of this shit from them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're out of pocket.
But I mean, it's genuinely good chicken.
It is very good.
Absolutely.
Bill, okay, those are the good ones, but I think, just as interesting are the real disasters. So give me the absolute worst fast food experience, and then also what is like the most ludicrous like single fast food menu item that's been the most disastrous in your opinion?
Okay. Of the ones I have had this year, there's so many. Okay, first of all, almost every new thing at Burger King has sucked over the past year. And like it goes without saying, like Burger King is really like something is wrong.
They have lost a
especially
step.
with Burger King's in my area where it's clear that like the person who owns them is just letting them decay until they all burn down and he can get the insurance money.
So they're going to be like Blockbuster Video or something.
Yeah, it's just like that.
The Burger King is being deposed.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because I also live by a bum Burger King. And I didn't know if this is a national rot or if it's localized.
Well, their stock is going. I don't know what they're doing, but like every week they have some new crazy item, and they're uniformly bad. I don't know what's up with them, but their stock is going up. Something is weird in their business. Anyway,
it's a drug trade.
The worst thing I had all year was the Fruit Loop mini donuts at Carl's Jr. You guys, and this like was controversial too because some people really like them, and you guys don't have Carl's Jr. in New York, but you have Hardee's, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Hardee's also had them, I think, and basically what they were their donuts. They're called mini donuts. They were the size of those standard mini donuts you get from Hostess, but they were flavored and decorated to be like Fruit Loops. They looked like giant Fruit Loops, like you're taking a Fruit Loop, from the cereal bowl and blown it up to 100 times its original.
Like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah, like you're floating around in the bowl with a lightsaber.
The thing is, they tasted like actual Fruit Loops, but like that amount of that particular texture and flavor in your mouth at once was repulsive to me.
I've never been to a Hardee's or a Carl's Jr., and not for lack of access. I've just never had an impulse to go
We
there.
would go when I was a kid. Like a Friday night, my mom would take us to Hardee's. It was Hardee's. It was either Hardee's, sometimes Taco Bell, or Ponderosa Steakhouse for the buffet. But we would go, and I liked it. But they had a roast beef sandwich back then that was like an Arby's one, and when I got, the bun was soaking wet. And so that's the last time I've been to Hardee's.
Okay, in a bad way. It wasn't soaking wet with delicious beef juice.
Oh no, it was just moist. It was just
That's
wet.
awful.
I did live by a Checkers, and I always thought growing up that Checkers was a regional chain. And it wasn't until getting older when I saw something called a Rally's using the same iconography.
But it isn't Rally's and Checkers is not it's like I've never seen one.
You've never seen
I think they're more East Coast.
They are, okay, I guess they are more East Coast.
And the thing is I don't think they're divided geographically because I think there's Checkers and Rally's in New York, right?
So why is that then?
Just different branding. I don't know. It's weird. But why is White Castle Crystals in the South? I don't know.
I mean, I don't know.
Those are two different businesses. They're real similar, but they're two different businesses.
Someone should sue someone else because they have identical fucking sandwiches.
What I'm getting at is, I mean, I guess that makes sense then if Checkers is regional, because I always wondered why that Checkers never really entered the national consciousness, because it is unique and good in my opinion.
They're pretty good.
The fries are great.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And they sell them frozen too.
Can I offer a quick Rally's take? That I remember, Rally's was regional where I grew up in Cincinnati, and I remember that they had a commercial that would play that was one of my all-time favorite business slogans, which was Rally's, you gotta eat.
Yeah.
Which was the absolute just like lowest statement of consumption and desire in society that I could ever imagine an advertiser giving.
Rally's, that's one meal down.
Okay, just for people who really want to know the difference, they're Checkers in the Southeast and Rally's in the Midwest, but they're owned by the same giant corporation.
Bill, as long as they're like the genres of fast food themed videos and social media, I'm wondering, do you follow any of the? There's not like a single account that curates these, but it's really more just of a genre of videos made by fast food employees documenting the just absolute anarchy of working in a fast food restaurant. I'm talking about, fist fights with customers, people screaming, and my personal favorite, people at the drive-thru passing you blunts while they're ordering.
Those, I've seen them. I try to avoid watching too many things that are behind the scenes just because I don't want to destroy the magic of fast food. It's like watching behind the scenes stuff at Disneyland. It somehow deflates the magic a little bit for me to know what actually goes on behind the scenes.
You don't want to pierce the veil. You want to be immersed on one side of the spectacle.
Exactly. And that's, I'll say that actually happens. It still happens to me with movies and TV. Like I had never worked in movies. So I can still go to movies and not sit there, and I can go to movies and be thoroughly entertained and not be like, oh, they wrote that scene wrong, that was shot wrong. TV, I don't have that pleasure.
So you're trying to preserve, fast food as kind of an oasis of sort of instinctual, sort of uncritical reflection and just pure experience.
Exactly. I think you got it.
Bill, what would you tell our audience to go check out right now? Because I think a lot of people will be listening to this and think, I got to get some fast food.
Okay. I would say these are the things I would suggest to check out right now. McDonald's bacon and cheese fries. Like they introduced all their new bacon stuff. The bacon and cheese fries are the jewel in the crown of the new McDonald's offerings. And I don't think they're going to be around actually for long. So those. Also at Wendy's has introduced these 3 new burgers, which I think they're called the craveable burgers. And one of them is like a barbecue and one of them is like a mushroom type thing. They're all really good. Also, we got a lot of good fish items out because it's Lent. Wendy's has a great fish sandwich that I reviewed a few weeks ago. And I'm also told that the Arby's fish sandwich is terrific, although I haven't been out there to see it. So of all the things that are currently out there in the mix, those are like the 5, I guess, or 5 or 6 that I would recommend.
Interesting fun fact about the bacon cheese fries at McDonald's is the reason that McDonald's has this bacon bumper crop on their menu. They've got the bacon fries. They're adding bacon to the Big Mac for a limited time. The reason that they have that, the reason they're able to buy all this bacon, which is usually too expensive for a fast food inventory, is largely because of the tariff war with China that Trump has. Because the Chinese slapped a retaliatory tariff on pork that closed the Chinese market to American pork exports, leaving a huge glut of pork. They could only sell domestically, which led the price to plummet. McDonald's swooped in and bought a ton of pork to make all of these bacon items.
That's also why we get the McRib, they claim. Although the McRib disappeared in late November, but we did have it for a couple months back then. And it's like, apparently it is tied to these pork prices because McDonald's purchases things in such vast quantity that they totally swing the commodities markets around when they do it. So anyway, yeah, enjoy the bacon while you can get it.
Yeah.
So you're telling me if you could predict when the McRib was coming back, then you could predict a swing in pork prices.
I'm telling you, there could be like a trading places style manipulation.
That's exactly
of the
what I'm
commodities market.
thinking.
Yeah. There's money to be made, boys.
In this.
The Grimaces are cornering the pork belly market.
Oh, that's Virgil. You bring up Grimace, but Bill, who is your favorite or just least favorite or most disturbing fast food mascot or character?
That's a good question. I have to think about it.
I mean, like you mentioned that Burger King is just basically a
terrifying,
a dying
rictus death mask in your face.
Yeah, right.
But that BK King was very popular, but I found it extremely disturbing.
Hated those commercials. When you wake up and he'd just be staring at you in the bed next to you, what the fuck?
I mean, like that marked for me like an era in American advertising where like all the shit that like Tim and Eric Awesome Show was satirizing
absolutely.
like just became advertising where they're trying to make you feel weird. And
it's so amazing. It's like Tim and Eric made that stuff to parody the weird, uncanny feeling of watching commercials and exaggerate it for comedy. And then commercials looked at that and then made it even more like that. It's amazing.
You're totally right. I mean, that's, I have to say that the one character that I like is Mayor McCheese. None of the other characters really stick with me except for Mayor McCheese, who's really dignified. He's classy. He represents also the McDonald's cheeseburger, which is probably my favorite item. I believe he does. He's not the Big Mac guy. The policeman is the Big Mac guy.
Yeah, Big Mac's the cop. I hate him. Fuck that. Fuck that cop.
All Big Mac cops.
All cops are burgers.
Bill, do you remember when McDonald's came out with like a cool, sexy hamburglar?
Oh yes.
Yeah. That was just like 3 or 4 years ago, right?
Yeah.
They were like, get this. It's the hamburglar, but you want to fuck him.
He's cool. It was
He's like a cool hipster dad. He lived in the suburbs, but he's still cool. He's like Beto O'Rourke.
Did he do crimes still?
He only threatened to. They only did one ad where there was like he's in his man cave. It looks like a serial killer movie because he's got a man cave in his garage, like Dennis Rader, with all of his trophies from when he was the Hamburglar. And then there's a report about how the Hamburglar, where is he? Is he going to come back? And then he grabs his outfit. But then they never had another ad because everyone was like, what the fuck is this? And they're like, yeah, never mind. You guys like the Grimace, right?
No, I love the idea of the Hamburglar coming back for one big score.
Yeah. They never did it. I think they were going to tease a narrative where they're doing like a Rafifi style heist with a bunch of burgers, but it never happened.
It's like
I got it. If you Google sexy Hamburglar, you get the full lowdown on this thing, and there's a photo of him, and it's from 2015. Like, people were also saying he was kind of a hipster Hamburglar, and I feel like he was another thing that was kind of washed away in the election of 2016. Like that, at least having worked on Portlandia for several years, I felt like the whole hipster thing, you never heard about it again after the election of Donald Trump.
That's true.
Like there was so much like abuse of hipsters and jokes about hipsters and hipster things, and then like I think it just like disappeared. Like
I just think it's like
better things to worry about.
I think it's because hipster, like the word, and it's just one of those like things that if like the definition became so elastic, it just covered like basically every young white person in the country, and like that elastic band has sort of snapped, but it's just been replaced with like SJW.
Well, that's the thing, is because
Snowflake
hipster, the implication of hipster, this is why Gamak McGinnis it was so hard for people to understand him and why he was able to fly under the radar for so long. It's because he had the appearance of a hipster, and there was an unspoken assumption about hipsters that they were like liberal, that they were like urbanites who were cosmopolitan sophisticates and at least bog standard liberal to leftists. And so now, when like Trump is president and you've got the eruption of, the seething mass of angry car dads and their shitty sons and MAGA hats, you have to like, no longer is this hipster chunk of white maledom the enemy. It's like you have to have an uneasy alliance with them,
I just think it's like, hipster used to mean like every white person like under 40 who lived in a city.
Yeah.
And now like that, like even that's too specific now. And now it's just every young person in the country of any race, gender, or location.
Yeah. Millennial replaced it.
Millennial. There
Millennial
you go. Yeah.
took over for hipster.
Yeah, there you go. It's like that's why you see like all the boomer memes about like eating Tide Pods and how, socialism will have you eating rats or whatever. Like that's all, it's all millennial hate. It's just the entire generation now has been hipsterfied.
That's an interesting point, and I actually want to follow up on that in the next part of this. But before we get to that, Bill, I was hoping that you would do us the honor of adjudicating our various fast food controversies.
Absolutely. If there's anything I like to do, it's express opinions about fast food, so shoot.
Okay. First off, as an aside, I just really quickly, I just want to get your Arby's take.
I think I think I did a video about this, but I want to be extremely clear. Arby's has been made fun of for way too long.
By the Simpsons.
Pretty good. Yeah, I didn't. Well, first of all,
sir, I have this clip.
I'm so hungry I could eat at Arby's. Oh my gosh, really hungry.
I don't think I put those jokes in, but in any case, I hadn't seen the light really, to be honest, until this year. I was amongst those. And I honestly think that Jon Stewart is to blame for a lot of Arby's being thought of as crappy, because every night he would use it as the punchline of a joke. And like, just because the sound is funny.
Yeah.
Arb.
You got a big
the sound
D
of
in
the word
there, yeah.
Arb is funny. It's much funnier than saying Burger King or Carl's Jr. because you go Arby's and it somehow tickles your brain in a funny way. But I will say that since I've been doing these fast food reviews, I've been to Arby's 3 or 4 times, and every single time it was terrific.
Preach, preach, preach. Arby's is fantastic. Horsey sauce is the single best condiment available in an American fast food chain.
And they've gotten smart by hiring H. John Benjamin as their mascot.
Yes. And the fucking Euro, delicious.
I would say also they can every month or two they have something new and interesting. Like they had the duck sandwich back in the fall.
Oh yeah,
which I had, and they're always good. So like I think that Arby's is the most underrated, and it's been criminally abused just because of its funny name.
Damn right.
So back to our personal quarrels. First up, my contention that Taco Bell is healthy.
Is there a second side to this?
I think you should elaborate. I think you should advance your case.
It's healthy and delicious, like a delicious choice, not a last resort.
Well, one, my contention that it's delicious. I mean, I take that as a postulate, basically. Like if you had it.
I agree. I would agree that Taco Bell is delicious. I like it. I didn't put it in my top national chain because I'm really, frankly, partial to hamburgers. Mm-hmm. But I always like Taco Bell every time I go there.
I've never had a bad Taco Bell experience.
And is it healthy?
My argument is, as Matt said earlier, an individual dish at Taco Bell will contain vegetables, it will contain dairy, it will contain protein, valuable roughage.
That's true of a hamburger as well.
I think the quantities are higher because you get a Taco Supreme at Taco Bell, you bite into the top of it, you're just eating vegetables. That's a salad.
Bill, I want to be clear here that these disputes that you're adjudicating here aren't really disputes. They're just sort of like
interventions.
They're just sort of edicts that Virgil has issued, to our bafflement and astonishment. So please continue, though.
Okay, Taco Bell, at least up till recently, had that menu, that healthy menu. You remember that?
Oh, yes. The cantina style.
Yeah, I don't know if they still have that.
No, they killed it because they realized people who go to Taco Bell think they're immortal, or they want to kill themselves. And either way, they don't want chunks of avocado in their guacamole and all that Chipotle bullshit. If they want that, they go to Chipotle.
Locally, they
want to put a sodium gun to their heads and pull the trigger.
Locally, they still have it, but go on.
This is what I would say. I wouldn't say it's healthy. I would say it could be healthier if you don't overeat. I think the thing about Taco Bell is that when I go there, I'm tempted to have 2 or 3 different things every time.
Yeah.
And so I think if you go there and you were to simply have your bean burrito or your Taco Supreme, it would probably not be healthy, but it would be less caloric than a meal at Wendy's or McDonald's.
Well, wait a minute here. Let's try to do as best we can an apples-to-apples comparison. Let's say you get a Chalupa Supreme and compare that against a Quarter Pounder. What's more nutritional?
Jesus Christ, that's a tough call, man. You're really slicing it.
Because a Quarter Pounder is just meat.
Wait a minute,
cheese.
This isn't an argument. You could just look at the nutritional information for the 2 dishes and answer it objectively.
I'm saying you're getting greens.
Lettuce doesn't really count. Iceberg lettuce doesn't really count as greens.
Not a lot of
man.
nutrients
You know that.
in there.
Yeah, but it still has a regulative effect on your digestive system.
I think
Virgil, nothing is regulating your digestive system, dude.
You have the least regulated digestive system.
Digestive system.
Your digestive system is the purge.
Yeah, I have a libertarian digestive system.
By the way, again, argument for the defense here. Virgil said, and we let it pass, I have never had a bad experience with Taco Bell. Yet that does not account to the many, many after effects that your body is still clearly ravaged by.
Yeah.
That is the result.
You're just not blaming it on Taco Bell.
Hang on a tick. I find that funny because this is actually this bit that Neil Hamburger does, which is retweet people who say, I got diarrhea at Taco Bell, and that's kind of I actually think that has no scientific basis. I think that also has just been a smear, much like the Arby's smear for the past few decades. That Taco Bell, you get diarrhea.
Well, he's Neil Hamburger. He's going at his competitors in the taco
industry. While you guys were talking, I looked up the nutrition information.
Thank God. Here we go.
Yes. It's extremely close. The quarter pounder has 417 calories. The Chalupa Supreme has 350. The fat and saturated fat are nearly identical. The Jesus Christ, the vitamins. This is really pathetic, guys. Okay, you get a lot more vitamin A in the Chalupa, yes, and you get no. Actually, you know what? You get a lot more iron. It depends on your vitamin makeup. You get a lot more iron and a lot more.
Do you need D or do you need iron? Do you need the D or do you need iron?
I'm going to say that the quarter pounder might actually be healthier. You get a lot more iron, a lot more
face. Drop
in your quarter pounder.
Science rules. And all right. So there's one other one I alluded to earlier. Sorry about that. The other one that Virgil believes, and that we've yelled at him about over and over again, is that Subway is good. That Subway is a choice to make above other choices for your fucking lunch. Like you would take Subway as a number one option because it's that tasty.
No, that's not my argument.
What?
My argument is, first off, that Subway is categorically fast food, right? So we're going to compare it to other fast food offerings.
Yes.
Within that tier, Subway is objectively the healthiest option without being like, a gross salad or something.
That's correct. There's no doubt about that.
You think it's good, though?
Yeah, I also think it's good.
I completely agree with that.
It's delicious.
It is I would say there's no, as far as I'm concerned, there's no question that Subway is fast food. There's no question that it is healthier, or there's certainly healthier choices to be made at Subway. They have a gigantic menu of fairly healthy things, and if you avoid getting like a lot of unhealthy mayo and stuff on it,
you get vinegar and olive oil.
Different things you can have that are fairly healthy there.
You get
but I don't get those things. I wouldn't want to get those things. I would get those things. If I was on a diet, I would go there. There's no question that Subway is a good place to go if you're on a diet or you want to eat healthy, but you still want fast food. But when I go there, I want to have the meatball sub, which is which is incredibly unhealthy but delicious. That's the only thing there. That's what I crave from Subway, and it's the only thing.
Well, see, so I'm just different in that aspect because when I go, I get the spicy Italian sandwich, which is toasted. It has healthy Italian meats on it.
No, they're not healthy meat.
And
cured meat is the most carcinogenic type of meat.
And you get a whole, handfuls of vegetables of lettuce, tomato, and spinach. You can get spinach on it. Spinach is one of the healthiest things you can eat. And where else are you getting that?
So just eat spinach then.
Yeah, it doesn't cancel out the planks of sodium-enriched cured meat.
If you really are that health conscious, swap out the cured meat for lean turkey.
Yeah, but you don't do that.
You can get that. That's totally like the dieter's depressing sandwich is the turkey sandwich, and you can absolutely do that at Subway. But like if you weren't concerned about health or fat or whatever, you wouldn't choose to go to Subway, I think.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
So what's the judgment here? Because I think my contention is clear that Subway is good. I'm not saying like, oh, this is the most delicious thing you can get. Obviously, I'm not saying that. I'm saying on balance.
Yeah. You know what? I would agree with you. Subway is fairly healthy and it is good, but it's good like it's a 71. It's not like in the 90s, It's just barely. It's good at the very bottom of the definition of the word good.
But is it better than other comparable sandwich-based franchises?
No way. It's not. Of all the sub sandwich places, it's the worst.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've never argued otherwise. I'm saying just because a Subway is so pervasive. They're like Starbucks. They're everywhere. You're not gonna. Look. We would be having a different conversation if there were like 5,000 Potbellies in the country. You know that.
Right. That's true. Potbelly is very good. I'm glad we all agree the Potbelly is.
All I know
good.
is that Virgil likes to share, photos of his Subway meals with us, and he'll blow up the group chat, and he will send us a photo of a sandwich that basically looks like a gym sock stuffed with wet things. And he's like, eating good. Jealous? And I'm saying that this is an illness, that this is a problem. That he's either doing it to annoy us or he's genuinely deranged.
I can't answer that question.
Well, is that it for the contract?
Yeah, I think so.
There we go.
Yeah.
Those have been put to
All right.
bed.
Yeah, solved.
Yeah, done.
Goodbye.
Bill, something we were talking about earlier, the whole hipster thing. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Mission Hill. That show ran for 2 seasons, I think, on WB.
Well, it ran for two or three episodes of the WB, and then Adult Swim. They ran the same 13 episodes over and over and over for like a decade. Yes, there was one season of 13 episodes, and then there were 5 uncompleted episodes, which you can find online or on YouTube or whatever.
Our producer Chris is a big fan of the show. I mean, I watched it growing up too, and I didn't really at the time. I was probably not at the age to enjoy the show, and I've not had an opportunity to rewatch it since. But he has in the past few years, and he wanted to ask you something about it.
Yeah,
please.
I mean, we were talking about this in like kind of in the hipster discussion earlier. I watched that show a lot when it was on Adult Swim when I was young, and then I periodically rewatch it. I probably watched the full season about once every other year. And it struck me, especially after I moved to New York in like the early teens, how I felt that a lot of the jokes and gags and observations that you were making in that about kind of urban youth culture, I guess from your perspective, writing it would have been in the late 90s, still felt so resonant to and honestly extremely predictive of young life in New York in the like 2010, 2011, 2012, and observations about music and jobs and working and moving into urban areas. I was just wondering like how you thought those trends in young people, what similarities resonated over periods of time.
I'm glad to hear that it spoke to people in the 2010s and whatnot, because it seems like I think most of the stuff you're describing is stuff that is fairly universal to people of that age. The reason we did that show was because there were no characters. This is one of the pitch points. There are no characters between the ages of 12 and like 30 on The Simpsons besides Otto. And so we decided we wanted to make a show that was all about characters that age mostly. So it was a high school student and a guy in his 20s. And the thing is that I would say we just took the stories from our own lives. We had a great staff of writers, including a number of people in their 20s. And most of the stuff was just taken from real life. And so I would say that perhaps it's not that we predicted stuff so much as those are experiences that are common to people of that age in any decade.
Yeah, just hearing that does make sense, because even thinking about like the TV landscape in the late 90s, it was a lot like, I guess you would say like Friends or something was about that age group, but that's so removed from any like observable reality. It's interesting that it fits in so well in an era of like, shows more like Broad City or something that would come on or would be popular in the early aughts when like this vast group of first quote hipsters, and then when people realized that no, it was just everybody under the age of 35 that was looking for some kind of representation in TV had it.
What's interesting to me is like at that time that you did Mission Hill, it seems that when Hollywood thought of like alternative youth culture, they were still talking about slackers and grunge and shit like that. And what Chris is talking about, I mean, the show being prescient, I mean, aesthetically, the show looks like it could have been made this year.
Oh, that's good to hear.
I remember one episode where, so Andy has a friend who's the bearded guy.
Yeah, Jim.
I remember one episode where, and Jim just hangs out the whole series until Jim's like, oh, do you want to just come to my work? And it's a tech office that looks just like a tech office would today with all the gewgaws and the fucking adult daycare bullshit. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I actually, I make six figures at this bullshit."
And Andy had no idea because he just was too selfish to ever ask. He was too self-absorbed to ever know that Jim had a job and was really incredibly successful.
Yeah, and Andy says, "Wait a minute, I thought we're not going to work. I thought we rejected that."
Right, I thought everyone in my generation was was hanging out, and it turns out they were all getting rich behind my back.
Yeah, exactly. I think
that's a pretty common feeling, especially that scene where everybody in the elevator is talking about how they're putting down a mortgage or all this other stuff, and he's like, he can barely scrape together the money to buy malt liquor,
Yeah, he's using the styrofoam cup as a replacement tooth because he doesn't have dental insurance.
Yes.
Yeah, I just always thought that was interesting, and I guess that comes from what you'd say then, and we talk about generations a lot on this show. That then seemed like a very distinctly Gen X perspective, but I think that even today people would really resonate with that anxiety between what you want to do, what you can do in society versus what other people around you are doing, maybe contra to what you thought were the values that you all held.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the thing is, this drew from, you made a good point earlier in that it was, at that time you were only seeing a really glamorized version of 20-something life on TV, and like Friends, everyone was doing unrealistically well and living a great life. Whereas we were, just like The Simpsons, we were trying to show kind of like the realistic, kind of somewhat depressing side of modern American life from this perspective. And a lot of it came from we were fans of Kevin Smith's early films, like Clerks and stuff like that. And also the comic books of Dan Clowes and of Peter Bagge, who did a ton of great stuff like this.
Wonderful.
That's my favorite comic book of all time. It definitely had a huge inspiration. Buddy Bradley was definitely a huge inspiration for this.
Geographically, what was the inspiration for Mission Hill?
At least in terms of the buildings, it was Wicker Park in Chicago. We went, the combination of the areas was I think we said in the pitch, it was Red Hook in Brooklyn, which at least this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It was downtown LA at that time, which also was very much like this, like Mission Hill. And it was also Wicker Park in Chicago, which is where we took all the photos. Most of the buildings in Mission Hill were drawn from photos of buildings in Wicker Park. And I have no idea what it's like now. I haven't been there for 20 years, but at the time it was pretty much like that.
And as long as we're fanning out about, or I get to fan out about this show that ran one season 20 years ago, I was always interested in hearing that you guys had plans for 10 seasons of it, where Andy would eventually become a success and kind of have to look at his values. And you did a little bit of that in the first season, where he becomes the waterbed manager and gets a taste of the glamorous life. Do you have any idea?
I'll tell you, yes. In fact, there had been just recently, as last year, there was discussion of doing a comic book that picked up where the series left off and took us through that stuff.
I will pre-order 100 copies.
The whole thing was planned out that Andy would basically change jobs every 8 episodes, every season, and gradually claw his way up to actually becoming a moderately successful kind of indie cartoonist like Matt Groening. And then by season 10, he would actually have become Matt Groening with his own TV show and a lot of wealth and all the problems that came with that. That was the plan for him. Kevin's arc was never really planned out, but it was Matt Groening's life was the inspiration for where Andy's trajectory was.
That's interesting, and I mean, I'm sure that would have given you tons and tons of fodder from having spent so much time with him.
Yeah.
Bill, how much of the show is based on your personal experiences? Were you a gentrifying hipster like Andy?
No, not really. It wasn't really based on my experiences, but thank you for asking.
Then what made you want to do the project other than just that, we just want to explore a different avenue of life? Did you have any kind of personal artistic motivations?
And if I can just add to that, at least in that first season, do you find Andy to be more sympathetic or more an object of scorn and ridicule?
I think we tread the line fairly well. That he's a very flawed person. But I think we're supposed to be rooting for him, but we also see his shortcomings, that his temper, he has a hot temper, that he's really he's really overprotective of his crummy cartoons and the whole please no meat touching scene and stuff like that. He's got a lot of shortcomings, but I think we were rooting for him to succeed despite them, I believe. As to answer your other question, I think we wanted to do a show we wanted to do a show that was more of an indie comic type of thing. And because we were huge fans of the whole independent comic scene in the 90s, we wanted to do a TV show based on those. And a lot of the characters just sort of came from people we knew, or especially like Carlos and Natalie are actually literally friends of ours. And we sort of populated it with people that we knew or types that we wanted to write for, like Gus and Wally.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful little gem of a series, and I would recommend any of our listeners who have not checked it out. I think all of it is on YouTube now, and it's just a very worthwhile watch.
Yeah, somebody put I got to tell you, I've never received a cent from any of the DVDs or whatever, so I don't care if you watch it on YouTube or download it from BitTorrent. But I believe somebody actually put this year put the entire series in pristine, beautiful, colorful video on YouTube, so you can watch it there.
Bill, just going back to you and your experiences. So you grew up in the outskirts of DC land, right?
Yeah. Well, we moved to DC when I was 10, but from birth till age 10, I lived in the country, up in a very rural part of Maryland.
You were childhood friends with Josh Weinstein, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys went to Harvard together. You wrote for the Lampoon.
Oh, he went to Stanford, but yeah, we did go at the same time. Yeah.
Oh, that's sad, but you kept in touch.
Yeah, he came. He was made an honorary member of the Lampoon, and we did a joint issue of our respective humor magazines.
And then you, after screwing around, you ended up in L.A. and you got a writing job for The Simpsons.
Yeah, there was a lot of in between there. About 4 years of really pathetic unemployment, including when I tried to apply for the foreign service. I was going to join the State Department, and I was I applied. We were really totally unemployed. I was doing temp stuff. I was getting unemployment, and I was like, okay, screw it. I'm going to apply for the foreign service exam to work for the State Department. And it was so hard that I gave up and decided to go give comedy one more try.
Like Chevy Chase and Spies Like Us.
That's very Mission Hill.
Yeah. You're right.
So how did you get your break on The Simpsons?
We wrote this is what happened is that we had moved out there with, the spec script. If you guys know what a spec script is, you have to write a sample. Basically, the coin of the realm in break TV writing is to write a sample script for free of some show you like, that then gets sent around to showrunners and executives to show off your writing style. And we moved out there with an episode of Coach that we had written. Remember the show Coach?
Yeah, of course.
Dauber,
and
baby.
Everybody was like, people were like, oh yeah, it's fine. And until finally somebody had the guts to say, guys, it's clear that you don't like the show very much. You've done a perfectly adequate job of mimicking the tone of this crummy show, but that's not going to get you any work. And we were like, and that was when we were like, oh crap. Well, let's apply for the State Department job. But then we finally met this agent who was like, write a show that you love, write a spec script of a show that you love. And it turned out that we wrote one for Seinfeld. This was right. Seinfeld had only been on for 4 episodes at this point, and we were like, nobody's seen this show, and we were like, okay, but it's really funny. Let's just write a Seinfeld, and then it was a huge hit. Like the weird thing is, people hadn't seen Seinfeld, but they really liked the script, and it immediately got us an assignment on The Simpsons. It also got us later a job offer from Seinfeld, but then they liked our script on The Simpsons, and then they hired us, and then the rest is history.
I like this idea of some snooty sommelier going, oh, this is a perfectly adequate coach.
It's really valuable. Like somebody we later worked with that guy again, and it's really valuable to have somebody tell you the truth about stuff like that. I can't, if people had just continued to bullshit us and say, oh yeah, this script is fine, I don't know what we'd be doing today, but it wouldn't have been this.
So you guys rose to be the showrunners of The Simpsons in seasons 7 and 8, firmly a part of the later years of what's called the golden era of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a definite tonal shift at that point, right, under your tenure, where there were more conceptual episodes.
There were definitely some, and I will tell you why that was. We were pretty sure the show was going to be dead within another year or two. And of course, that was one of the greatest wrong predictions of all time. Here it is, season 32 or whatever. This is the thing. No TV show lasted more than 5 or 6 seasons. Cheers, went 9 or 10, right? MASH went 7 or 8 or something like that. When we were running the 8th season, we were like, this show only has 1 more season left or 2. So let's have all the fun we can have. We'll do all the episodes we ever wanted to do as fans, and then we'll leave. And that's what we did. So because we were this was a rare opportunity because we were so the way that The Simpsons is set up is the network doesn't have any input, and they just have to broadcast what you give them. And also, Matt was busy doing other stuff. He wasn't around. Jim Brooks was busy directing his movies. He wasn't around. So Josh and I were just running the show with literally nobody tell us what to do. And we were like, screw it. We're going to do all the crazy crap we always wanted to do as fans of this show. And we did it. And then we assumed the show would only go on under a year or two. And that's obviously not what happened.
Why did you make that assumption? Because the show was massive, right? It was a massive
No,
movement.
it was not. It was not. Let me make this clear. People think that the show was incredibly successful in season 1 and 2, like when we were on opposite Cosby on Thursday night or whatever. But during all the other years after that, from 3 to 10 or whatever, we were coming in. We were number 58 or number 62 every week, and we were roundly getting clobbered by Mad About You, which was on at the same time. And like people forget that like the show, the ratings weren't that great amongst grown-ups. Like we would, as I said, we'd always be in the 50s or 60s in terms of the show ranking for the week. We'd attract almost all of the kids, but very few grown-ups. And I think we were fairly convinced that, shows that were number 58 that were as expensive as The Simpsons did not stay around for long.
Well, that was the golden era of Suddenly Susan too.
Yeah.
But exactly. That's fascinating. Like in terms of how we perceive of culture from a present standpoint versus while it was on, because I was a kid when these seasons were on TV, and The Simpsons was like the appointment viewing. I would watch it every Sunday night,
absolutely,
with my family, and to this day remains a of that era like a cultural touchstone. It's like it's like a foundation, I feel, for like all of American culture, basically. But what I'm interested in is like you mentioned, Virgil mentioned like in these more conceptual episodes in season 7 and 8. I'm thinking specifically about probably one of the most classic episodes, the 22 short films about Springfield, right? And what's fascinating to me about that is looking back on it now. How do you feel about like all those episodes? And then I'm thinking the steamed hams moment in particular has taken on this whole other like meta second life online and specifically on Twitter through the sort of re-experience and recreation of these classic gags and moments from the show as these kind of meta-textual commentaries online. Do you follow that? Or like, what do you make of this bizarre kind of mirror second universe for The Simpsons that exists online through memes?
Yes, I follow it and I love it, and I get dozens and dozens of mentions of it a day on Twitter, and because people know that I wrote the steamed hams thing, so they send me every different mix of it, and so I've seen hundreds, and I love it. It's crazy, as you said, it's crazy. I don't think it really started till about 3 or 4 years ago, and it kind of took on a life of its own as people attempted to top each other by mixing up the craziest version of steamed hams, or or other memes like liver and onions or the dud, which have also taken off in the past couple years.
And no, they're all great because all of those original gags are so funny and people remember them. But like, I just think it's fascinating the way like the kind of remixing, but also I would advance the case that of that classic era, everything that happens now in the real world finds its corollary somewhere in those episodes. Like in that it is a kind of, I don't know, it's like a Nostradamus or like a Rosetta Stone or something for decoding American culture.
I think that's probably because there's so many episodes to choose from. Although I guess most of this stuff comes from the first 200 episodes.
The good part.
There's so much stuff that has to deal with the essential phoniness of a lot of American life that has only become more obvious in the past 20 years. The essential corruptness of our institutions, the laziness of our law enforcement, and all these other things that I think have become more obvious to the general public. We were just kind of like lampooning them without a specific target. I think that it's also like, Mad Magazine did the same thing. And I think that these institutions like Mad or The Simpsons that poke fun at American society only become more respected as time goes on. And you see that you come to understand their point of view, and that you come to see the seams that are holding everything together, and the kind of decaying structure that holds our society together, which we were kind of making fun of.
There's a kind of meta language that's evolved about the show that Will is talking about, that you can just use an image from the show with no text on it. And like this is understandable by thousands of other people following.
Yeah. Do you guys follow Dave Itzkoff of the New York Times on Twitter? Like he puts on like 2 or 3 of these every day, and he's always got the perfect one. It's like I'm just saying exactly what you said, Virgil, but you're totally right. And he is. I would say that he's the emperor of doing that right now.
And there's a lot of people who they're our age, and they grew up watching the show either as the episodes came out or in syndication. And they go online, and it's almost like a cargo cult has been constructed around the show that has now impacted just merely the way we talk about politics. And I'm curious what it was like for you to discover that.
I would say I enjoyed it. Like that, I'm pleased that the work that we did has resonated, and especially because so much of the material you're describing comes from those early seasons that we were either there for or wrote for or produced. I'm delighted for one. But I guess in terms of your question, like, are you saying like, do I like it? What do I think about it?
I guess here's what I'm getting at is, in the past few years, I've seen a lot of the guys from the show, join Twitter, right? Like Mike Reese is on Twitter, and we had him on our show to talk about his book. And I can't help but think that if people were sending Mike Reese this steamed hams in a totally inscrutable steamed hams meme once every hour, I can't imagine he would understand that or really want to delve any further into it. But it seems like you just, you logged on and you saw this and you're like, oh, this is great.
Well, I think that Mike has a lot better things to do than I do. Mike travels the world and is like, and is, he doesn't have to work if he doesn't want to. He's got a lot of money saved up, and he's got a real vibrant social life. Whereas I sit at my computer for 8 hours a day, at least. So I'm always right on this. I'm always right on the verge of, I wouldn't say I'm extremely online, but I'm very online. And so I am like, every day we're talking about today. We're talking about John Podhoretz's neutron bomb remark or whatever. So yeah, I'm connected in a way that I think I can appreciate the up to the minute reference, but mainly because I'm just wasting a lot of time online,
I mean, the steamed hams one is the perfect example of this, because it was a sort of mind-blowingly absurdist bit to begin with. But now through the memification of it, I don't know if you've seen those like YouTube videos where they replay the Aurora Borealis thing like hundreds of times. They all edit it together, and some like all of it. Like it's become so, as Virgil said, inscrutable and just pushed even past the limits of the originally bizarre gag. It just, I don't know. It just speaks to the internet.
And what's interesting?
I have seen them. My favorite one is the sad one where Skinner dies at the end, and Chalmers is out there in the forest at the end, like camping and looking up at the sky, and Seymour's there in the Aurora Borealis. That's my favorite one. I feel like that's the one that we should end this. I don't want it to become tired. I don't want this to become a tired relic of 2018 where we're all like, remember that stupid obsession with steamed hams. I think we should all enjoy that one and then stop doing it for a while.
Okay, one more though. Are you familiar with the Irish Simpsons fans, the Ireland Simpsons fans?
Yeah, I love their
group?
account. I love their stuff. I don't get it half the time, but when I do, I love it. I think I follow them.
I think that they are currently the best Simpsons meme producers online. And yeah, most of it is stuff about like, Brexit or Irish stuff. But by the way, we should look them up when we go to Ireland.
Absolutely. Lift a pint.
What's interesting to me, Bill, is that, I've talked to fans of the show, and a lot of our fans are very young. They're Generation Z. And they say, I'm a huge fan of The Simpsons. And I can't help but think, well, is your cultural touchstone different? Because are you talking about, oh, yeah, I love the season 20 episode where they go to Atlantic City. But no, they love just those episodes from the 1990s. And they say, oh, yeah, they just still play just those episodes in syndication.
I think that might be a function of those ones being so online. Like that those are the elements. They're the fodder for all these memes and stuff. So you want to generate I'll tell you from my experience, my experience with having kids these days is that kids do not know The Simpsons very well. And I'll tell you why that is, because Fox shot themselves in the foot by not putting it on Netflix. Like this is like my kids and all their friends know every episode of Bob's Burgers. They've seen them all 20 times. Every episode of Futurama, they've seen it all 20 times because they were on Netflix and they would just be on in the background playing and playing and playing. Whereas to see Simpsons online, you have to go to Fox's FX world. You got to log in with your cable provider's thing, and you got to watch 2 minutes of commercials at every act break that you can't skip.
And they're edited.
Yeah. Well,
TV
is it edited?
anyway?
I think they have the ones.
But the ones
Fox,
on TV,
on
the
FX
ones on
World.
FX.
In any case, that is, I think, prevented a large number of people under the age of 12 from becoming as familiar with the show as they might be. And what I'm thinking, Virgil, when you said that, is that maybe they know it from YouTube.
Mm-hmm. I do just have a few more questions here, unless you want to jump in with something. I have to ask you this, because we did have Mike Reese on, and we asked him it too. What can you tell us about John Swartzwelder?
I'm sure Mike covered it probably better than I could. I mean, John Swartzwelder was a very talented, very unusual man. Like you can't like. Well, I'll just say the basics to begin with. When we were working there, he was still back in the room every day. Must have been probably about 50. He's tall. He was a little overweight, but pretty about the same size as me. He smoked constantly. He always wore a short sleeve shirt that was like kind of a Western shirt with two pockets in the front, and each pocket had a package of unfiltered Camels in them. He would smoke. This is when you could smoke in the room. Like back in the 90s, you could smoke in the office. It was totally normal. Everybody was smoking. And he had an ashtray and would smoke all day long. He's a very unusual guy in that he didn't really work on any other TV shows. He worked on SNL briefly. He did wrote a couple of other scripts, but I think his humor was a little too crazy for almost everybody except for Sam Simon, I guess, who hired him probably on the recommendation of some other guys like maybe George Meyer. And he also was just a very unusual guy. Like he never went to the movies unless it was a Stanley Kubrick movie. So he'd only go once to the movies once every 7 or 9 years. He didn't believe in exercise, except that you should just run down the block as fast as you could once every week or so. He didn't. He had a huge collection of historical memorabilia, and I think this is probably why he was probably able to retire. Like he would invest in things from auctions. I know he had a couple. Most notably, I know he had a couple of paintings by Adolf Hitler from when Hitler was an artist. And I also know he had thousands and thousands of old newspapers from the 1700s and 1800s. I know that he also, because he wasn't a kind of guy who he didn't spend much money at all, and so he, I believe, got pretty rich based on his writing 52 episodes of The Simpsons and with all the accompanying residuals. And he bought, I think it was not Roy Rogers' old house, but Gene Autry's old house, and moved into it with all of his old newspapers and stuff. And his brother, who I heard had been injured building and been on disability for a number of years because he was injured building the Alaska pipeline in the 70s. And so they lived together. And I don't know anything about that. Like, I haven't seen him since we worked on The Simpsons together. I know he writes all those books that are hilarious, and he does promote them on Twitter from time to time. I'm not totally sure that's really him, but it might be. And I think that just about covers it for John Swartzwelder. He was always a really nice guy.
What was his favorite Stanley Kubrick film? Do you know?
I don't know. I think he was moderately disappointed. The only one that came out during the time that I knew him was Full Metal Jacket, and I believe he was moderately disappointed by that.
That's a shame.
What was he like in a writer's room? I mean, did he do, sit and do punch-ups and things like that?
He was pretty, it's interesting because there's some guys who never shut up in the writer's room, like Conan, for instance, was in the writer's room, and Conan is always on, and he's always really fun. Not to criticize him, because you got to have some guys like that in the writer's room, or it just kind of drifts into oblivion. He was one of those guys who was quiet until he had a great line. So he would sit there and smoke, and then maybe he would speak once every 8 or 10 minutes, but it would always be the line that went in.
I read that he wrote the script to Homie the Clown, and that pretty much aired with virtually no, punch-ups or line changes.
It's pretty close. He didn't really, I wouldn't say that the room was his forte. It's the first drafts that were his forte. Yeah. He wrote his first, and I think he preferred to be at home too, especially after they banned smoking. That was a huge issue. It was around 93 that they they banned smoking in workplaces, and for a brief period, they tried to get him those ashtrays the smokeless ashtrays, and that worked for about a day and a half. And then David Merkin, who just really couldn't stand the smoke, was like, you should just write scripts from home. So he wrote a lot of great scripts during that time. And the thing about Swartzwelder is like, he's going to give you a script with 90 hilarious jokes that no one else could have come up with. It's just that you have to provide him with the superstructure that handles the emotions and the character development, because that's not his. That's
the
not
female
his forte.
character.
Like that would be John Vidi's forte, for example.
Yeah.
And Swartzwelder, like, so when we were running the show, we would try to give Swartzwelder scripts that already had that built in, or ones that didn't need it, like the Prohibition one, where we were just like, screw it, there's not going to be any character development. It's not going to be realistic at all.
Oh God, that is one of my all-time favorites, by the way. That's one really stands out in my head.
That was another one that was probably, I don't know, 70% his first draft.
Maybe there's something to Swartzwelder's a total rejection of modernity in his personal life that made him such a uniquely good writer.
I think, like, he really, if you wanted old-time style jokes, he could really deliver them. And like he did you guys ever seen Pistol Pete? That was the pilot he did.
Yes, that's very good.
Very funny and completely uncommercial. He also wrote another one, which I loved. That, God, it really makes me mad because so many great pilots were written during those days, like by George Meyer and Swartzwelder, that just 20th just like threw right in the trash. And he wrote this great one about two little kids, and one of them was named Augie, and it was just it was a real nostalgic kind of American, comedy show about two misbehaving kids, but like it was hysterical. And it was another thing that was just obviously like went way over the heads of those executives, and they completely ignored it.
Bill, I know we're running out of time. I just wanted to ask you a handful of questions, more, King Solomon stuff for us.
Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. In episode 3F03, Lisa the vegetarian, Ralph, when told to go to sleep, says, "Oh boy, sleep, that's where I'm a Viking." This line can be interpreted in two distinct ways. Ralph could be saying he's literally a Viking in his dreams, or Viking here could be figurative, meaning something like virtuoso. Which is correct?
Okay. I want to say I didn't write that line. I wasn't even in the room for that episode. It was a David Merkin episode. But based on my knowledge of The Simpsons, I think the first one is correct.
Thank you. Once again, vindicated.
Well, it sounds like we've got to talk to David Merkin. All right. In episode 3F23, You Only Move Twice, Hank Scorpio throws out his shoes and asks Homer, "Ever see a guy say goodbye to a shoe?"
I know where this one's going.
To which Homer replies, "Yes, once." Is Homer referring to what Scorpio just did or to a prior shoe-throwing incident?
Okay. I've answered this online a number of times, but I'm happy to do it for you guys because I can be super clear. It is disputed because the answer is that that was not in the script. A huge amount of the interaction between Scorpio and Homer was improvised by Albert Brooks and Dan Castellaneta. That line was not in the script. It was improvised, and Josh was directing them. And here's what happened. Josh and I always thought it was referring to a previous incident. However, Dan Castellaneta, who made up the line, says he was referring to what Scorpio did right then. So there you go.
Wow.
Wow.
There's no clear answer. It's because the two sources, the showrunners and the person who made up the line, disagree. And I think given that Dan made up the line, you're going to have to, it leans toward him.
My last one, and this is one I just figured out from my conversations with Matt.
Yeah, when Virgil pointed this out, it broke my brain a little bit.
So, in the 4 Golden Era episodes that are flashback episodes that show the evolution of the family, it's pretty clear that, based on the ages of the characters, Homer and Marge met when they were 18, when they were seniors in high school or thereabouts. In the present day of the show, they're 35. Bart is 10, meaning that Marge had Bart when she's around 25, and that's when they get married. A big part of Marge's character is that she's had these kind of unfulfilled ambitions, know? It's the sort of implication that, like, if this were more rooted in reality, they would have, like, had the kid when she's 18, right?
Right.
They would have gotten married then.
That's the thing, is because she didn't go to college, and she married Homer because she got knocked up.
Right. So there's just this whole 7-year courtship.
Yeah.
That, and I realize that these are the sort of things that were mostly determined before your time, maybe even before they even the episodes even began to air. I'm just curious to get your thoughts on that. Have you ever felt that was a gap, or just conflict.
Wait a minute. I don't remember this. Was Marge pregnant when they got married or not?
Yes. But when she was 25.
But I mean, only if you assume that they're 35, and I think it was said several times that they're 35, then instead of them getting together in high school and getting knocked up shortly after that, they spend 5 or 6 years together,
maybe 7,
where she's not pregnant, but presumably she doesn't have a job or go to college, and Homer has an unspecified job. What were they doing?
She's still
guys. I have never thought about that until this very minute. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I do know what you're talking about, but I can't believe that wasn't covered in some later.
This is
episode.
like the fact that they never covered Jesus Christ's like adolescence in the Bible. Like,
all
those like lost years. Yeah,
it honestly just comes down to the fact that Homer shouldn't be 35; he should be in his late 20s. Problem is that just doesn't scan
right
for a guy who looks like him.
They do actually, and I found this out totally by happenstance. They do actually cover it in a later episode, the one where they retcon it and Homer becomes a grunge musician.
Oh wow! Okay.
We've discovered an error in The Simpsons. Virgil's so happy right now.
No canon.
Also, yeah, I mean, it's hard.
10.
Like those, I just say that those guys are doing yeoman's work in trying to craft this era where Homer was born in 1985 or whatever. Now, like
Jesus Christ,
when we were writing Homer, he was written like our parents, and our parents had been born in the 1930s, you know, and so like. He was like sitting. The prototypical Homer moment for me is like Homer sitting alone in the car, going do 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 do, singing "Little Spanish Flea" to himself, which is something that only our parents would have done. And like my dad is 90 years old now, so like I think we were really writing Homer as someone who really should be in his 80s or 90s now.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for the next flashback episode that shows how Marge rose up through the ranks of the DSA, and Homer is a famous Twitch streamer.
Perfect.
I think that about does it.
Yeah. Thank you very much for talking to us, Bill.
Bill Oakley.
Guys, my pleasure.
Thank you for enlightening us on fast food and also for helping to create probably the all-time greatest television show ever.
Yeah. Way to go on that.
Good work.
Kudos.
Good work.
Kudos, Bill.
Thank you. Well, you guys all know, and I'm sure your listeners know where to find me on Twitter and on Instagram if they like fast food reviews at that Bill Oakley.
At that Bill Oakley. Not this Bill Oakley, but that Bill Oakley.
We will include links in the show description. Once again, Bill, thank you so much for talking to us.
Till next time.
It's my pleasure.
1, 2, Bye.
3, Bye-bye, guys.
4.